afternoon, everyone. I'm Michel from UBS. It's great to be here. So what I want to do in the next 30 minutes is talk a little bit about how we see AI changing the world. So we've been using AI for a long time. And one of the things that we have seen, and I guess all of you, is that in the past 2 years, 3 years, it's incredible, the speed of how the developments are going on, the new things that are being developed, creative new solutions and ways of making use of AI. It's incredible. It's gotten hard to actually, keep up with what's happening in the markets. And so, one of the quote that you see here has never been more true than today, I think. When you think about AI, there are always things where we would say, yeah, but this is not working well, but here are hallucinations, things that don't work as expected. But we're also really bad at remembering how it was, a year ago, 2 years ago. And I think when we think about how we build products, how we try to bring things to the market, to talk to clients, we really have to keep in mind that all the things and limitations and concerns that we might have now, some of that will just be gone because the development and the speed and just how well these things work, it's changing so much. And so no better time, I thought, than now to talk a little bit about 5 predictions of how AI is going to change the world. If only we can move forward with the slides. Any help on the tech side? Yes, perfect, thanks a lot. So the first one, previous presentation, loved it. Maybe I should use some of the soundtrack later on then for the closing. Really loved that. He kind of covered this, how we change and how we communicate. And so starting, if you can move to the next one. I want to show a couple of examples of how we think communication is changing. Still not working? Yes, thank you. So how many of you are using AI to help in how you write your mails, reply to mails, and so on? This has become kind of a standard way of doing it. Raise your hands, many are doing that now. It's kind of the new standard, isn't it? We can move on to the next one. But where might that go? I like to use this example. This is kind of a joke from like 2 years ago, but it's kind of become true right now. So basically what it is there is Brian. Brian wants a job. And so Brian, the only thing that Brian is doing is telling his AI, like, I want the job, this is my CV, create a nice email and send it to this person. That's what he's doing. Really nice email, dear sirs, and this is what I would like to meet. This is the perfect job for me. Very nicely written, but actually, no one is ever reading this because the person on the HR side also has an AI. And the only thing that ends up with the other person is really, there's Brian wants that job, and here is the CV. So all the things in between, we don't need that anymore. The tools that we have today, they can do that. People do that right now. And if you think about that, what happens to the communication in between? Do we still need to write these types of mails? And it's kind of the same thing with books, with all kinds of content that we produce and then read. I'm not reading books anymore. I'm putting that in my AI, and then I get the summary, or I can chat to it, or I convert it into a podcast, listen to it. The book, I don't need it. I need the nugget. I need the insights. I need the core of what the book is all about. It's a little bit like this example here. So what it means is this type of communication, will we still have to do that? So when we talk about how we talk to our clients, how we explain things to our clients, probably the format is going to change. Just one example. The next one, if we can move forward to the next slide, that's a screenshot from my inbox, so my spam folder. And, I guess looks the same in your spam folder, a lot of free stuff I can win, a lot of money I can find somewhere. The spam filter is really good at picking up on these things, typical AI use case. If we can move forward, the new thing that probably some of you have already tried out, if you have an Android phone or now on iOS, if someone calls you and it's an unknown number, it's not going to be you answering the call. It's going to be your AI. And your AI is going to ask, who are you? What do you want? Is it worth my time, actually? Is it worth Michel's time to basically make me, disturb me and let the call through? And we don't have that in Switzerland yet. So if you have an iPhone, hopefully it's going to be here soon. If you're in Germany, for instance, you can already use that. And that's just one example of how these channels and communication formats are changing. phones, mails, push notifications, your browser. There's going to be an AI filter in your browser, and you will only see the things that your AI is basically letting through. So if you're in the business of talking to clients, communicating to someone, you have to think about how can that work in such a world where you have to convince an AI to let your message through. So probably you will have to come up with ways to be really personal, to be really to the point, to make it really relevant so that even an AI would say, yeah, that's absolutely relevant. It's not just a newsletter of sorts, it's not generic, but it's actually helpful for my person to actually let it through. The next one. So that was a kind of a fun example where two chatbots or two AI assistants were talking to one another. It was kind of a fun example, let's say. But actually, reality, if you're going to go on to the next one, is in the new world, and we've seen that in the other example. One back, please. We've seen that in the other talk. Reality is we see more and more agents, agentic AI, talking to one another. So it's all the things that we have built for people, for clients to look at, like websites, like APIs, like apps, thanks a lot, journeys, all of that. We've built that for people. We thought about people will have to look at this with a nice design to understand how to click forward, how to make use of that. Now it's more and more agents taking over because it's easy to do. In the new world, it's going to be a lot around making it easy for agents to interact with you, your business, your product, whatever communication you have in mind. And that's so what we have to decide is, do we want to make it easy? How can we make it easy for agents to participate in that, to make use of that? Or do we want to block access to our real estate in the digital space, our products, our ideas that we want to share? Do we only want to share that with people? Or is it actually important for our business model to make this accessible for agents? An example here is Amazon does not want to have agents surfing on their web because they should want to make sure it's a human experience and they don't want to basically open up the market to competitors. And these are decisions that we will have to take in how we want to be present in such an agentic AI space. Second prediction about data privacy. So I would start with this example. I took this picture at the main station in Zurich. So it's that time of the year when it's about changing health insurance. So you still have until the end of the month to change your health insurance. And I want to quickly check who is actually changing health insurance this year. Raise your hand. It's very few. Studies say it's about 10% of people do that. And actually, at least 50% would benefit from it, and quite substantially. So why don't we do it? Because it's cumbersome. You know, you have to do some research, you have to find the right forms, you have to send it in, the additional documents you have to bring in. It's cumbersome. And that's part of the game, so to speak. But what if you could actually just, use one of those AI chatbots, those AI helpers, and just say, ChatGPT, please help me find the cheapest health insurance for me based on what I need, what I want. Here are all my documents or my medical history, all the things that are relevant for this decision, and you take care of it. You find the right provider for this, the right service. You sign on my behalf, you just get it done. Of course, fake example here, so ChatGPT cannot do this yet, but what if it could? I'm sure many of us would do this every year. That would change the whole fabric of how this works with health insurance in Switzerland. It's kind of part of the game that it's hard to change your health insurance provider. If it's easy, we're going to do that every year. If it's just about saving money and we have the same service, of course, we're all going to do that. And that's, I think, is a good example for, the concerns of data privacy versus it solves the problem really well for me. Makes it really convenient, makes it easy, saves me money, whatever that might be. And just thinking back, in the past, people would say, well, my credit card, this is really sensitive information. I'm certainly not going to give that away. But today, we all give that to Apple. For instance, if you have an iPhone, you will all have your credit card given to Apple because they make it really easy to buy apps, subscriptions, listen to stuff. It's just really convenient. It would be really cumbersome not to do that. It's the same thing with passwords. Google passwords, in the past, people would have said, maybe not sure, maybe I don't trust them too much, but it makes it really easy. If you give it to the Google Chrome browser, So you don't have to type it in on all the web pages. Billions are doing that today because it makes it really easy. And thinking a bit ahead, my favorite example, I really hate doing the tax returns, every year, the same story. If we had a ChatGPT or kind of an AI assistant that would do my taxes, I would really handily hand over all my sensitive salary information, tax statements, all of that, just to get it done. So I think looking back, we just see that in many cases when people started with kind of a critical attitude towards sharing data with everyone and having a really strong view on data privacy and making sure not to share too much, it all depends on what the problem is that is going to be solved and how convenient and easy that is going to be made. And just thinking back to the story that I've just seen in the previous talks, there's so many seamless and easy ways of just getting things done. I think we'll see more and more just these concerns to go away because it just solves a problem really well. Third prediction, so jobs will change, and first in very small ways. So I want to use this quote here that I really like, and it's kind of like a mandatory quote in all the AI talks. You see this everywhere. I'm sure there have been other talks today where you have seen this quote, but it's really kind of true. AI won't replace you. A human using AI will. And this all goes back to the question of what's going to happen to our jobs? How are they going to change? And so typically the concerns that you hear is, my job, is it going to go away? Is it going to be made redundant? And this quote basically means that it's not about the jobs being totally replaced by an AI. It's more about you will have to make use of the AI because your competitors, your peers are going to do exactly that. And I want to make this a bit more tangible, real examples. So I'm showing an example from UBS. This is a screenshot of our internal AI tool. We affectionately call this RED, linked to our corporate color, RED. And so what RED is doing is basically it's an internal AI assistant that knows everything about UBS, basically. All kinds of internal information, make it easy to have access to these kinds of information, to find it really efficiently, make it easy to talk to content, basically. It's a little bit one of those use cases that we see, I think, in many corporate environments. And so this started more as a, you could say, search engine, just to make it easy to access information. But more and more, just seeing how people use that, we want to move that in the direction of thinking about the processes, how we work, and which of those steps we can actually replace or make easier by making use of AI. It's less about looking at the job where you would say, we're no longer going to do that, especially in our business. Our business is all about, we want to be a good financial partner in life for our clients. And this is certainly not going to be a robot trying to do that. But of course, when we set ourselves up for a discussion with a client, try to be really relevant with good content, with things that our clients are interested in, there are a lot of things that are just not as efficient as they could be today. So when we talk to our client advisors, who are in the business of talking to our clients and bringing the best advice out to them, there are so many things where they would say, but this is wasted effort, there's wasted time, there is a lot of stuff that we actually don't want to do when we prepare for a discussion with clients. And that's exactly where we see the biggest attention at the moment, to look at all those little things that happen behind the scenes and change all the little pieces where we can actually accelerate and make things easier. And so in the end, what it is kind of a hybrid setup. It's a combination of the right people with the right skills, with the right expertise, and make them superwomen and supermen. Make them really good at their job. And I think that is the way forward in how we will make use of AI. And so the fourth prediction, I think all the things that we see today, even just in the previous talk, a lot of that is really at the very beginning of the things that we can actually get done. And so thinking about what kind of use cases do we have? Where can AI actually help? Where is the value coming from in making use of AI? So I have 3 buckets I want to talk about. The first one is all about just making things more efficient. Many of the things that we have just seen it's all about, we looked at the writing email use case. Yes, you can make that more efficient. You don't have to read a book. You can just read the summary. Makes things much more efficient. Many of the tools that we all use today, it's very much in that bucket. Is it a good use case? Yes, it's great. It's great impact. If we can all become more efficient, we should do it. This is kind of going to be the new level of just how we work. And it's not just making us more efficient. I mean, that's good from the perspective of a company, your employer, but it's also just going to be the new level of what we would expect from an employer. If you start a new job and you don't have access to these types of AI tools, you will no longer want to work for that company. So that's kind of just going to be the next level of how, the new level of how people will work and what people will expect from an employer. The second box, it's much more about your business, your product, what you know about your clients, how you build a product, your journey, whatever you can bring to the market, whatever your product is doing. So this is much more about things that only you know, that only your product can do. That is much more at the core of what your USP is in the end. So this is very much related to whatever product you have, whatever problem you're solving. And so here, this could be something like the data that you have, things that you know about your client. How can you use that? How can you use AI to turn this into something that helps you be better, be faster, have a product that no one else can have? What is it that you know and no one else knows? And how can you use AI to turn it into something that's helpful? I would say at the moment, most of what we see happening is more on the left side. It's more, maybe 70%. It's more about making things easier, automating things, helping you be faster. Here is a little bit more where the secret sauce is. I think this is where it's more about generating new business, about driving revenues, about different types of use cases, new products, new ideas that you might bring to the market. I think it's maybe 30% of focus at the moment. I think this is where the biggest growth is going to be going forward. And the third bucket, and that's the most difficult one, this is about trying to come up with a whole new way of doing your business, a whole new product. In banking, could be a whole new banking product that we don't even have at the moment. Could be a whole new way of talking to clients, engaging them, making them part of their financial story, whatever that could be. And so the most difficult part, because we all don't know what that's going to be. Of course, in the past, there are a couple of examples where we did have these kinds of disruptive use cases. But now, so thinking about banking, very hard to say where that is actually going. I use here the example as my favorite one, is where it's about folding of proteins. And so basically what they did is they came up with an artificial brain in a way that is able to think about how proteins fold. And why is that important? Because this has something to do with how they react, what kind of treatment maybe you could use it for. And so instead of having to go to the lab and trying out things all the time, if you have a really smart artificial brain that could just think about it and come up with exactly the right candidate to maybe try out in a lab, this is cutting the biggest part of the funnel that pharmaceutical companies have to go through to actually bring it to the point where they have a promising candidate that they can maybe turn into a product. So kind of the biggest part of where a lot of effort goes into, and the biggest part of a cost, where the pharmaceutical company is able to cut that and come up with a shortcut that immediately jumps to the kind of a product that is ready for a first lab test. That's going to make a whole difference. That's basically going to mean it very hard to catch up for all the other companies. And now let's think about something. What could that be in banking? No idea. Very hard to actually think about where this might go. And so very hard to think about that, but no reason not to start thinking about this. So you might say, but if we don't know where this is going and how we need to start to design such a disruptive product, you could still say it totally makes sense to start making use of AI, to start trying to use it, build the skills, build the infrastructure, build the capabilities so that you can make use of AI, work with your data, with your products, with whatever you know, and start turning that into something that creates value. At some point, maybe someone else will come up with something that is one of these disruptive products. And if that's the case, you may want to be at least the second or the third one to follow up and then invent something that is basically good enough to catch up. So very hard to come up with such a far-reaching thought or idea. And that brings me to the fifth and last prediction that I brought with me today. And that's basically all of what I've just said is probably wrong. Very likely that it's going to be different because it's very hard to see where things are going. We have been working for a long time with AI, but those developments that we've seen in the last few years, no one really predicted this, at least not with us. But still, it can also be just to catch the opportunity and try to turn it into something that then you can work on, which basically means at the moment, the right place and the right point in time to actually start working with things is exactly now. Because we all don't know where things are going, and we want to be ready to make use of the opportunity when it presents itself. Thank you very much. And I think we have a few minutes for questions. Any questions I can answer?
Hello, thank you for your talk. You mentioned your assistant, Red. What are you thinking are the next steps for that assistance? You mentioned that consumers were willing to give more and more information. What do you think you could facilitate using UBS Red for consumers to make their life easier with AI and keeping the trust in banking?
I mean, it's a big question, I would say. Red is just one example. This is one example of how we use AI. So for instance, this is an internal tool. So we use that for our employees, for our client advisors. We only use this internally, but we also have a chatbot that is client-facing. Clients of UBS can use a chatbot to get their problem solved. And so one of the trends that we very clearly see is to make these types of chatbots and virtual assistants really useful. And what it means, really useful, is basically not just have a chatbot that tells you about what you need to do or sends you a link that you need to follow and then read through something. That's the old way of doing chatbots. The new way is you have a helper that just gets stuff done. You tell the chatbot, this is what should be resolved. You tell them, I'm interested in something. Can I read more about, I don't know, financial markets and trends and what UBS thinks about the future? I think that's the direction that things will travel. So a bit linked maybe to the previous talk. We talk a lot about channels and chatbots and apps and what is basically the channel to talking to a client. I think that's going to be more seamless. I think in the future it's more going to be you are somehow in touch with companies like with UBS, but it's going to be different channels, and it doesn't matter which channel it is. We'll have to find a way to make it really easy for clients to communicate with us. And I think some of what we've seen in the previous talk is exactly where things are heading. And there's going to be a lot of AI involved in that, understanding what clients ask, maybe coming up with a really good proposal that is exactly for this one individual situation. It's the perfect match, the perfect answer. It's going to be a lot of AI happening in the background, but I think it's not one product, it's not one thing, it's not one feature that you will see. It's just a whole new way of communicating. And not just because we want to, but that's just going to be the new benchmark, basically. Everybody's going to do that. We will have to do that too. Other questions?
So we talk a lot right now about where value generation is going to happen with the help of AI. What's your take where value capture is going to happen? Is that going to happen on infrastructure layer mostly, or like somewhere on the level of LLMs, like owners of the models, or maybe application layer?
What, I did not get it, sorry. Can you repeat?
So my question is, like, we are talking a lot about value generation, like where AI generates value. For instance, you made an example with pharmaceuticals, for instance, how it can cut costs on research. I wonder where the value capture is going to happen. Like, who's going to capture the value? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I don't know. So I think at the moment, it's not yet clear how this AI world is going to look like. Even just the AI providers that we have today, is that still going to be the same set of AI providers? At the moment, we have a few leading players in the world. Is this going to be more multipolar? Is there going to be more ways to actually, generate kind of the AI magic that we use? I think that fight is not yet really clear. And then maybe a bit linked to that, there's going to be the question, where is the value actually generated? You know, we would say we use the AI just as part of how we run our business to be the best bank we can be for our clients. But in the end, you know, there might also be a value creation very close to, I don't know, to a fintech that is creating something new that no one ever thought about. We might make use of that as part of our business. For me, I think it's very hard to predict where that is going to be. At the moment, it's kind of a simple world, I guess. The same use cases we see everywhere, and the same way of using the infrastructure for this. I think it's not yet really clear where that will end up, to be honest. Thank you very much. I think I have to bring it to an end. We're over time yet, so thank you very much for your attention.